Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Eden Road podcast, where in today's show we're going to be going over another win at home, this time against Manchester United. We went out 3-1 winners, on Saturday on the early kickoff. Dan, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to see that Ruben Amorim got his steps in at the weekend, pacing up and down that touchline when we went 2-0 up. He doesn't inspire confidence. If that was our manager or anyone else's manager, especially for a big team, I just don't think he inspires confidence the way he behaves on the touchline. And someone needs to tell him the penalty didn't go in as well, just in case he missed it.
We'll talk a little bit about Ruben Amorim because he features in Tweet of the Week. But first, Craig, how are you, mate?
I'm very good, actually, because after the Fulham game, I was struggling to see the positives going into this one. And Keith Andrews did exactly the right thing, and he's proved me wrong and shut me up. And I'm very, very happy that he's done that.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about Keith Andrews as well, because in the previous pod, we spoke about how we'd like to see the team set up. And obviously, Andrews went for something a little bit different, but there was a lot of changes in the game that I think we should talk about too. But just before we do all of that, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts around the United game. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Eden Road on Twitter, at Eden Road Pod on Instagram. Tweet of the week this week, I have gone for a Man United fan, actually. Josh MUFC 951 says, disastrous game. Genuinely one of the worst games since Amorim took over. Even before him, no plan B, won't change the system. Teams already know how we're going to play for the whole 90 minutes. Keith Andrews, a fucking physio, changed his system over 6 times during the game, played us off the park. He's got to go. Dan, I'll come to you because you were talking about Amorim just then. I don't know how he's still in the job. Do you?
No, he makes subs, but then he just moves the players around within that very rigid formation that he absolutely refuses to change. And it clearly doesn't suit the players. Bruno Fernandes shouldn't be playing as deep as he is. He should be playing further forward. They don't have the players. You look at Crystal Palace, and that's how you play over back five, not Manchester United. And I think the one thing that we probably underestimated, because I've watched them a couple of times this season, they didn't look generally as bad as they have done perhaps last season. But I think what we underestimated is just how bad they would be. And, I could see how it's a back four game when they play like that, because they were not very good at all. And in the first 25 minutes, we could have been 3 or 4-0 up if the headers from Vandenberg and Collins went either side of the goalkeeper. So, yeah, I don't imagine they'll continue with Amorim for too much longer, because he is just so stubborn, and you just can't see how it is going to change for them with him in charge.
I think there was a lot of talk. I typed in Keith Andrews' name on Twitter after the game, Craig, and a lot of people were saying, United have spent so much money in this last window gone, and you've got Keith Andrews in his 6th game in charge, pretty much out coaching him, which isn't new for Ruben Amorim. But yeah, I don't know how he's still in the job. There was another tweet that I want to bring into it, which came from Opta, and this was posted pre-Fulham. It's like a justice table. Brentford fans will know what that is because XG Philosophy posts it all the time. But Opta posted a table, and it kind of outlines which teams are underperforming / overperforming their XG, and then they translate that into expected points. And we are one of the underperformers in the league. Liverpool are the overperformers. They haven't, well, they've got more points than their expected goals would suggest. But there's been a lot of talk about expected goals this week anyway, because Martin O'Neill's been on TalkSport slagging off our manager again, but he's also been talking about expected goals and how it's complete nonsense. Your take on that, Craig? Just, I don't know if you've seen the videos, but they went pretty viral this week, and I've seen more quotes on Martin O'Neill, on Keith Andrews. But just in terms of that table, I know it was hard to kind of look for any positives after the Fulham game because it was so dire, but we aren't. I mean, if we're going to buy it, our owners buy into this kind of stuff a lot, so we should as well, maybe.
Well, you kind of look at Matthew Bennett and you think he's done nothing wrong for us to disagree with what he wants to do and the trajectory in which he wants to take the football club. So if that's what he wants to do, I've got no reason to not back him and his decisions, and obviously the people that he's brought on board as well. Now, the interesting thing from that is obviously the table that you mentioned is teams like Liverpool, teams like Wolves. Obviously, Wolves going into the weekend had 0 points. You've got one off Spurs. Liverpool going into the weekend with 15 points, and I believe they had an expected of like 8.5 and things like that. Now, expected goals is one of those stats that it pains you it pains you, because when you look at it and you go, oh, we've lost that game 1-0, but we should have scored 3. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter what we should have done. What we didn't do is score. And it's one of those ones that bugs me. So I'm not a huge fan of expected goals, but as a club that uses stats in the way that we do, you can understand why people talk about it. And look, if Keith Andrews keeps proving people wrong, let the pundits, let people keep doubting him. It's exactly what we thrive on.
And just Dan, just on, I thought I'd put it in the tweet of the week section because I think it was just an interesting point, because obviously Thomas Frank's start to life at Brentford was far from ideal. I think he lost 8 out of his first 10, but the reason they kept him on and the reason they didn't pull the trigger was because the underlying numbers were good. So, you know, if Matthew Benham and Phil Giles are looking at the justice table and using that as a kind of measure on whether they think Andrews is doing a good job, what's your take on that?
I think there's value to this. I think, what expected goals does is it judges the quality of the chances you're creating and the quality of the chances you're conceding at the other end, and it gives a good indication as to performance levels. I think, the reason we see some teams overperform is probably because they have better players. Some of those Liverpool players probably don't need as bigger chances to take their chances at one end. Then they've got Alisson at the other end saving one-on-one. So that's the difference. And I think when you don't have, such good quality players compared to the top sides in the league, you are maybe likely to underperform that a bit. But I think in terms of underlying numbers, it shows that we're generally on the right lines. Generally, in terms of our performances, obviously we've spoken about, we have had a couple of shockers this season, but on the whole, we've been okay. On the whole, we haven't given the opposition too many chances, and we've created enough to, win the games that we have done this season. So I think it goes to show something, and I think what you got to hope, and then you got to believe in our players that they will take their chances more often than not, and we can keep things out at the other end, which we did this weekend. I think Man United might have just won the XG battle this weekend with the penalty included. So, already we can see a bit of a turn there. So, in terms of the general performance levels, which is what Keith Andrews is instructed basically to set us up in a good way to be good at, I think he's doing well in that regards. Obviously, individual quality, there's not too much Keith Andrews can do about that apart from keep training the players.
Let us know in the comment section, because I think this is a really interesting topic. That video of Martin O'Neill basically completely slagging it off, its validity, its point in football, really made me laugh. And there was some interesting discussion in the comments on that as well. So let us know in the comment section what you think of XG, what you think of the justice table if you've seen it. It was posted by Opta a couple of weeks ago. So if you wanted to go check that out, just Google it or put it into your social media platform, you'll be able to find it. Let's talk about United then. I'll mention, we'll start with the lineup, because I think we spoke on the last pod. We said we don't want to see a back 5 against teams that we think we can beat, i.e. against Fulham, but against United, who also set up in a back 5 and who want to dominate the ball, we all kind of agreed. Well, you two agreed. I would have still seen a back 4. I said a back 4 on my video on TikTok, but we went for the back 5. We went for the back 4, sorry. Dango Ouattara came in. Were we surprised to see that formation, Craig?
Well, I fully expected it to be a back 5. I was saying going into this game, when we were talking about last week, do you see a change? No, I see it being a back 5, because this was one of those games that, like Dan said last week, it's one of those games that we'll identify as we'll catch them on the counter, we'll let them have the ball, but we'll catch them on the counter and we'll score a couple of goals. But that's exactly what we did whilst playing with the back 4. And although you've removed one from defence in going for a back 4 instead of a 5, we looked so much more solid, I thought, excluding the goal and the penalty, which is like a silly mistake. It surprised me that we went for a 4, but it was the perfect starting lineup that we could have gone into this game for. It was absolutely spot on. And Aaron Hickey, by the way, seeing Aaron Hickey back into the starting lineup for the first time in almost 2 years was brilliant as well. So I'm very, very happy for him. But I was surprised by it, but it completely worked. It completely paid off. And I'm glad he took that risk. But he obviously identified United's weaknesses in Maguire being not very quick, De Ligt not being very quick. Dalot, he gets forward a lot, which leaves them too vulnerable to that long ball. And that's exactly what happened with the 2 goals in the first half. So credit to Keith Andrews after I gave him so much stick last week. Credit to Keith Andrews. He absolutely nailed that formation and that lineup going into the game.
We said after I remember we said last week that, if we've got any evidence of Andrews reacting to performance, the one against Forest and the changes that he rang for the home game against Villa, that would suggest that he was going to make wholesale changes. Obviously brings Aaron Hickey in at left back, switches to a back four, brings Dan Grovitara in from the start. But Dan, you said something in the group chat that I found really interesting pre-kickoff. Do you want to explain what you kind of meant?
Well, I just feel like at times this season, and obviously he was proved right on this occasion, but I feel like at times this season, Keith Andrews reacts in his changes based on what happened in the previous game rather than the specific opposition. But I think, first of all, Man United are a hard team to prepare for because they are a big side. They've got good players, but they're not performing at that level at the minute. So do you treat them as a big side if they were to come and play their best football, or do you treat them as, a bottom half side, which they've been for the best part of the last year? So I think that's where we probably overestimated them a little bit in terms of thinking that maybe they would come and play a bit better football. So I think that's why probably Keith Andrews went for back four and it worked. But previously, like looking at the Fulham game, my concern was he played a back five in the Fulham game because we played a back five against Chelsea and it worked. Whereas Fulham is a completely different game to Chelsea. Chelsea are a good team who have good players who are performing generally well, even if they're not the best team in the league. Fulham are a team that I felt that we should get a bit more control against. So it having not worked against Fulham, I thought he changed to a back four perhaps because it didn't work the week before. I hope that's not how he's approaching things. It's just, it was my thoughts at the time. I hope he looks at this City game at the weekend and realises actually they're a lot better than Manchester United. Perhaps a back five is necessary for the City game. But we'll find out. I think it's very difficult at the moment to predict when he's going to play a back four or back five. Thomas Frank, you could always kind of tell based on who the opposition were, whether it's a back four or back five. But this season we've seen back fives against Bournemouth in the Cup, against Fulham in the league, as well as against some of the top sides. So it's harder to tell, which also has its benefits, I guess, because, opposition managers then will be guessing to an extent.
I think the Fulham result of the weekend, which I think a lot of people would have been happy about, kind of vindicated that a little bit. They're there to be got at. Villa get their first win of the season against Fulham. And although it wasn't comfortable, I mean, if we'd have set up in a way that I think we should have set up in that game, or at least make the changes at halftime that we spoke about post Fulham, but persisting with that back five was obviously the wrong idea. But he is learning, and we'll talk about the kind of City game and how we think he may set up. But obviously, we do have to talk about Igor Thiago as well, Craig, because only Erling Haaland has more goals than him this season, and it seems like he's getting better every week. I'll come to you first on his 2 goals and the kind of approach from Brentford this season, and I'll come to Dan as well, because we've got to give him his flowers now. He's scored 4 goals. I think that was comfortably his best performance in a Brentford shirt, at least since the Chelsea game. But yeah, Craig, lead us off on Igor Thiago, because I love this guy. I really love him.
He's a passion merchant, and I am here for it. I am here for it. I love it. The thing that, well, I'm sure every Brentford fan that was in the stadium or was even watching it on the telly was thinking, how the hell is he not offside for that first goal? Thinking, how the hell is he not offside? And it felt like half-hearted celebrations, because especially in the West Stand, it felt like half-hearted, as in, well, this goal's going to get disallowed because he's obviously 4 or 5 yards offside here. Like, how hasn't that been flagged? And then it was more the surprise of it being given than the actual goal going in, that the celebration was a bit bigger then. But what a bloody finish that is. And I know we're probably going to talk about him later on, but what a ball from Jordan Henderson again. What a ball from Jordan Henderson again. It's good to see him also get his first goals at home. Because obviously the 2 he scored previously, 3 he scored previously were at Forest, at Sunderland, at Bournemouth. So it's good for him to get goals on home turf, and hopefully that kicks a run of games where he can get a few goals as well. Obviously, the fixtures that we've got coming up isn't very favourable, but They might work for him. First goal, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Puts it right in the top corner. Nothing the goalkeeper could have really done about that one. And the second one, for me, is the sign of a really good striker, just being in the right place at the right time. And that's the kind of goals that he's already scored this season. Barring the penalty at Forest, when he's at Bournemouth, he's in the right place at the right time to get that touch from Carvalho to put it in the far corner. And then Sunderland, he obviously wins the header, doesn't he? And puts it in the top corner there. But he's a busy striker. He's such a busy striker, and that's exactly what we needed him to be. He's quicker than he looks, so he chases down passes, he pushes defenders back, he puts the pressure on them. We're kind of seeing the player that we thought was going to be replacing Ivan Toney when he first came in. Obviously, he had a long spell out, and really, he's still just getting into the swing of things. You know, he's still just getting into the swing of things, which is really good, because if this is him at 75, 80%, it's going to be great to see him at 100%. And we've made so many jokes and comments about, you know, for his stature, he doesn't win very many aerial challenges. But it's either no player or no striker has won more aerial challenges than Igor Thiago this season. So we're obviously seeing something completely different here. But I think sometimes we expect him to flick it on, but he likes to bring it down and then bring others into play. But arguably his best performance. It's easy to say his best performance because he scored 2 goals, but they were 2 deserved goals. And I was a little bit gutted for him that he didn't get a third towards the end of the first half and early in the second as well. But I'm very, very happy for him. It's a great performance, and if it's a sign of things to come, once he gets to 100%, we could have a player on our hands. That's for sure.
I love that the chest down. I love that little touch to Sharda for the second goal. That was very Ivan Toney-esque. But he's different. He's brought in as the Ivan Toney replacement, but he is a very different kind of striker to Ivan Toney. He moves around a lot more. His pressing's a lot more intense. But maybe he's not got the quality on the ball that Ivan Toney does. But to be fair, like when he was running through on goal and he just lashes it into the top corner on the half volley with his left foot, I was thinking, wow, I didn't know that he had that to his game. I think, Dan, as Craig just said, you know, if we're seeing him now at 70% and he's scoring goals like he did against Man United, I think it's time to start getting excited about Igor Thiago. Am I going too early? And are you going to try and bring me back down to earth?
No, he has been a lot better in recent weeks. I mean, he's a really likable person as well. You really want him to do well. And that first goal, it's a shame that we all thought it was offside because it was a brilliant finish. No one's saving that. And I've never really been concerned with his goal scoring because he has scored goals all season this season. And, you know, Brentford as a club have a history now of having goal scoring strikers. So we're doing something right in terms of creating chances. Whoever we have up front seems to score goals. And he's doing that. I think my main concerns after the first few games this season was his general play because he was still scoring goals during that period. But, you know, I think it was actually probably the first or second game where he didn't score that I thought was his best game in a Brentford shirt so far because he just helped us get forward a little bit more. He helped us link up play. And I thought in those early games between him and Sharda and Dango, if he was on the pitch, we really struggled to build from the back. We really struggled to go direct because he wasn't holding it up well enough, or he was a bit sloppy on the ball. He looked a bit off it. But in the last couple of weeks, he's looked a lot better in that regard. And I think that's what we really need from him week on week, even if he doesn't score every week. That's the most important thing we need to see from him. I still think he's a bit unconventional. You know, he had a shot in the second half outside the area. He spooned it completely wide, and it didn't look natural the way he just struck that ball, which is weird. I guess he doesn't always pass the eye test if you're watching him, because he does have occasional touches and shots that just look like it doesn't come natural to him at all. But you know, with the stats that he's producing, both in terms of winning duels and scoring goals, he's obviously doing something right, even if it's not always noticeable amongst his general play. But he's definitely got a lot better in the last few weeks, and you know, we really need him. He is one of our most important players because we don't have anyone else to replace him if he got injured. So it's really important that he keeps improving and keeps it up. And you know, he has confidence now. He's had a run of games. He knows that starting spot is his, so he's got to keep going now with that, because I'm sure we will sign another striker when the window opens, either in January or next summer. So this is his chance to make that place his own.
Craig, you mentioned Hendo. I think you're
muted. I am. Yeah, I was there.
Go
What
on,
sausage?
what
I was going to say, I'm really disappointed that Thiago's assist for Dango against Aston Villa hasn't been credited to him, because Dango missed the first chance. It doesn't go down as a Thiago assist. So he has had.
It was a free header. It was a free header though, Dan, wasn't it?
It was. It factually was on that occasion.
Well, it factually was, but it was still an assist, wasn't it? Because he flicks it on for Dango. But because he misses the first chance, Martinez saves it, and then he pokes in the second effort. It doesn't go down as a Thiago assist. So he's been robbed with that one.
Before I talk about the Hendo assist and the kind of patterns that we're seeing from Brentford, who kept the faith in Thiago and still has him in the FPL team? Own up, or did you bin him?
I never had it.
You never had.
Never had it.
Got him. I've still got him. I've still got him. Yeah, I've stuck by him.
Still in my team.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Henderson assist, Craig, you mentioned it, and his impact on the game. I think it was much needed after Fulham. But I was interested. Carragher did a piece on MNF last night, and he was talking about, sorry, not last night, on Monday night, and he was talking about Brentford, or the first signs of Keith ball or Andrew's ball or whatever you want to call it. And he was talking about how few of our goals have come from sort of baiting the opposition press, skipping out the midfield and going long. I think you saw that in the Henderson assist for Thiago was almost identical to the Henderson assist for Sharda. As soon as he picks up the ball, the front man is spinning off his man. And obviously we get the goals in both situations. But are we reading into it too much? Is that something that you've seen and it's been like staring at you in the face? Because I was looking at Carragher's MNF piece, and I think, he was talking about how enticing the opposition onto you and then going long and bypassing the midfield is like a trait that we're seeing consistently from Andrews. I said we've seen it twice in 2 of the goals, but are you seeing Andrews' ball? Is what I'm trying to say, because we mentioned that we were struggling to see an identity in the team post Fulham, but I don't know if we were getting a bit too lost in the actual result itself. But have you seen any kind of identity on the pitch as of yet?
It's pure Chief Keith ball. That's what we're going for. What I will say is there was a video in pre-season when they were all out in Portugal, and I'm sure that we've spoken about it before, when Keith Andrews says to Sharda, when we lose the ball in these positions, there will be gaps behind the fullbacks. And that's exactly where the goal came from for Sharda against Chelsea, and that's exactly where the ball came from for Thiago's goal on the weekend. And when we've got a player like Henderson, who is going to just pick the ball up, get his head up, and get it gone, there doesn't need to be a transition between defence, midfield, and attack, because we can just bypass it, because we've got the runners in Sharda, we've got the runners in Dango, in Thiago, and the person who can play the ball in Henderson and Damsgaard and Jensen when he's on the pitch, when he does it. We've got the players that can do that, so we can just bypass that whole transition period anyway. We don't need to do that because we can just get the ball up there. And you look at Chelsea, and we did it. I think it was Tosin that was chasing him down, and then obviously puts it through his legs with a nick. But in that video, Keith Andrews says, when we lose the ball in the right back position, win the ball in the right back position, there will be spaces behind the opposite fullback. Now, obviously, United don't really play with fullbacks. They play with wing backs higher up and just have that back three. But it was clear that there was going to be space in behind De Ligt and Maguire, especially with the way that they play as a staggered defence. So when you've got I think it was it to begin with Dalot, Maguire and De Ligt as their middle three, or was Dalot on one side? Either way, because they play as a staggered.
I think Luke Shaw was a left centre back.
Luke Shaw maybe then, but because they play as a staggered three, that means that one of them will always be slightly deeper than the other two. That then creates the space behind the other two centre backs, which is where Thiago ran in, because obviously he bends that run as Maguire is trying to run forward to offside trap him. Again, the trademark onside trap from Amorim strikes again. So he does so well there. But it's I don't know if it's like Keith ball or if it's just simple football.
Yeah.
If it's just simple football.
I think that's what my question was really. Dan, what do you reckon? Is it simple or is it Keith ball?
I think it definitely works better against the better sides who aren't, especially if they're not competent defensively, like Manchester United. I think that's that strength is probably also the criticism against teams like Fulham, that we're trying to do that too much. They're able to defend it, and then they get the ball back every time we lump it forward. So I think there's a time and place for it. I think it is something that he's highlighting and trying to expose, but I still think we need to see a bit more variation in terms of sometimes we will need to get on the ball more, sometimes we will need to create chances in different ways. And it's early on in his tenure. I'm sure that will come, but obviously when it works, it looks good because 1 minute you're defending, the next minute you're in the opposition box and you scored, and that's clinical. And you get Jordan Henderson playing these raking balls over the defence, and looking like prime Perlo. So when it works, it works, and I do think it is something in Keith Andrews' identity and what he's trying to do. But there's two sides to it. There's certain games this season where it's not worked at all.
Well, we may see that against Manchester City, and I think some of the joy that we've had against Manchester City in previous systems or in previous years, has come from that system as well in terms of bypassing the midfield, getting the running runners in behind, going a bit more direct from goal kicks, etc. But speaking of goal kicks and goalkeepers, Craig, I'm going to hand to you for some Craven Kelleher chat because obviously he did massively redeem himself, but if he doesn't get better at this, if he doesn't get better at cross collection this season, it's gotten us into trouble already, and it will continue to do it if he does not improve in that regard. So what is he doing? I don't understand. Does he just need to be better? Is it just simple as that?
For goal, absolutely, he just needs to be better. That he wasn't strong enough, and you know what? We would be saying we've seen fouls like that given so many times throughout the Premier League, as in, like, goalkeepers are overprotected. And any contact to the goalkeeper, referees usually give a free kick against them, against the attacker anyway. But he did in this instant for whatever reason. But it doesn't matter come the end of the game. But he needs to be stronger. The thing is, in the second half, he was collecting crosses. He was commanding his area. He was confident. He was going for the ball. But it's like he starts slow, and he takes a while to get into it. Like he'll collect a couple, and then he'll start punching, or he'll start punching and then he'll start collecting, and he either needs to milk that challenge from Mbeumo and hit the deck, because if he stays on his feet like he does, it looks like he hasn't been strong enough. You got to look at Emi Martinez in the challenge and the goal that Damsgaard had ruled out when we played Villa. The slightest touch and Emi Martinez falls over like he's been shot, but we've got players that are a bit too honest sometimes. If Kelleher just falls over, excuse me, sorry. If Kelleher falls over, he gets a foul for that. Then there's the two chances that Šeško has before he scores. First of all, I would say any goalkeeper should be punching the ball, palming the ball, patting the ball away from any area except back into the goal mouth. Now, I understand it was a reaction, but he had his hand behind the ball and pulled it forwards. He could have quite easily just palmed it out towards the left, and then it wouldn't have been a problem because it wouldn't have come back to the middle. The second one, which he gets down and he saves, it's almost straight at him, and it feels like he should have just kept a hold of the ball then as well. And then obviously Šeško puts the ball in the back of the net at the third attempt. When we give teams 3 chances to score, that's when that's part of our downfall. We can see silly goals. Yes, I'll give Kelleher his flowers as well. Credit where credit's due. If we hadn't scored that, probably including the third goal anyway, he won us the game. And that was the issue he had with Flecken last season, wasn't it? Or the season before, where we were saying he needs to win us points. And the penalty save completely changes the flow of the game. So you could say that he won us that game. And I know that we should talk about that penalty as well. But he needs to do better. Whether it's a confidence thing or what, he needs to just his decision making just seems off, because in situations where you think catch the ball, he's punching it.
Yeah.
And then in a situation like that where it looks like he's trying to catch the ball, just punch it. Just get it away from the goal. So he's kind of caught in two minds at the moment. But it's his first time domestically, obviously being a number one in this country, especially. So I don't know. Give him a little bit of time, I want to say, and then hopefully confidence will build. He'll get used to. It doesn't help when we change the system so frequently, going to 3 and a 4, 5 and a 4, or a 3. It doesn't help the goalkeeper. But he's got Collins in front of him always. He's got Sepp in front of him always. It shouldn't be something that's a problem, but he makes it seem like a problem. So fingers crossed, it's just a bedding in period.
It's a shame as well, because I think if we're going into half-time at 2-0, and Dan, you mentioned the 2 chances we had from headers shortly after we scored the second, it was a pretty flawless half. That first half, in the first 20 minutes, we battered them. We didn't really concede too much, and then we give away a sloppy goal like that, and then you're going into half-time thinking, well, this is going to capitulate. And you mentioned the penalty there. We'll talk about it now, because I think we need to talk about Nathan Collins in general. He's not had the most amazing start to the season. Craig, you sent me a message saying he's looking like the Collins of old in terms of, freakishly inconsistent. He's either really good or really bad. And I think he's had a couple of the bad performances. And I think Saturday was another one, Dan, because, he's lucky to stay on the pitch. I think everyone's kind of in agreement that was a definite red card. But it was just some of his in possession when he had the ball, particularly in that first half. He just kicks it into touch or kicks it straight back to them. We're just surrendering possession needlessly. I don't know what's going on with him this season. Can you see it lasting, Dan?
I think, I'd see no reason why he can't return to his best. You look at him and he looks like quite a modern centre-back, quite good on the ball, quite happy to step into midfield, can go on marauding runs at times, happy to press high against the opposition attackers. So he's got everything he needs to have to be a very good player. He's played alongside Van den Berg for a while now. He already knows Kelleher from before. So there's no real reason for him to not be performing as well as last season. The only change is the fact that he's captain now. But again, he's been Ireland captain already. So he's not new to that kind of role. He's still got Jordan Henderson in front of him. And although Henderson doesn't wear the armband, he doesn't show up. So, he's not the only one being a leader on the pitch. So I think we will see him improve. We didn't give an awful lot away in this game, apart from the penalty. That was a big moment. I think Bryan was getting to the ball and he should have been sent off. But we got away with one there. I think earlier in the season, there's been incidences that we thought we were hard done by on. I'm not too worried about Nathan Collins. I don't think it's we're anywhere near talking about him potentially having a game off or anything like that. So yeah, just go again next week. We won the game, and he must know that what he can do, and that he hasn't been at his best in the last couple of weeks. And I think we'll see him return to his best. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't.
Before we move on to the third goal, and obviously we've spoken about Kelleher getting that redemption moment as well. Lovely bit of shithousery from Keith, making all those substitutions just before Bruno Fernandes took the penalty. I thought that was really nice to see. And then there's been a lot of Man United fans crying about that, and also a lot of Man United fans crying about the Collins red card situation. The latter of which I completely understand, because he should have been sent off. But there was also a very high challenge on Ouattara, I think in the second half, and it was Fernandes in question as well. Really high challenge on his knee. Don't know if that was a red, but kind of balances out. We've needed a bit of luck this season. I think we got it on Saturday. But let's talk about the third goal, because I think I've seen it clipped up about 1,000 times now, because it was really nice football. Sharp counter attack. I think the Premier League posted a video and it was like from defense to attack in fewer than 10 touches, because it was a lovely bit of play between Sharda, Janelt, and Yarmo. Yarmo skipping over Bryan. That's pure cinema there. I love that. Just skipping over Bryan and shoveling it onto Jensen. And it was a beautiful goal to wrap the 3 points up. But I think a lot of people have been singing Yarmo's praises. We've sort of spoken about him before the season started, and we were talking about how if we're going to be good or not if we're going to be good, but we're expecting big things from him this season, or to have like a kind of Damsgaard-esque season. And I think, would it be too far to say, Craig, that was his best, at least the first half, and to be fair, the second as well? I thought that was one of his best, if not his best performance in a Brentford shirt.
When he's surrounded by players in midfield like Jordan Henderson, like Mikael Damsgaard and Jensen when he comes on the pitch as well, he's going to learn so much about the game, so much about the way we play and how he can impact the game. And like you say, that's hang it in the Louvre, the picture of him jumping over Bryan in the 95th minute. It's just brilliant. And yeah, probably, I mean, I'd probably go down as one of his best games in a Brentford shirt. But that's where we talk about consistency again, isn't it? But he's only young, so you know we can't give him too much discredit, especially for the performance that he's putting in. Just needs to be a bit more consistent, but he's going to knacker himself out, isn't he? Because the way he runs and runs and runs, it's just relentless from him. So all I can say is he is going to learn so much from Jordan Henderson, from Mikael Damsgaard. He's only going to get better. He's only going to get better.
Well, you made of him, Dan. I think he's beefed up a little bit as well. He looks a little bit more bulky. He's barging people off the ball a lot more frequently. I just think he gets about the pitch and he's got more of a presence about him this season.
Yeah, he's going into the team, wasn't he, this time last year? You know, he only ever came on for a few minutes here and there, and it's hard as a young player to adapt to the Premier League if you're not playing regularly. And obviously now Janelt is back, Jensen's on the bench, but he's the one who gets to start alongside Henderson. And I think he's growing, and I think you want players like him to keep starting because his ceiling's higher than the likes of Jensen and Janelt. You know, this is his first goal involvement. I think that's probably the next stage for him to get more involved at that end of the pitch, goals and assists. You know, I was a little bit surprised to see he's never even got an assist before until this game. So that's where he can grow. He can definitely get better. But again, with Henderson, I think they complement each other well because Henderson's in his mid-30s, and although he does look very fit for his age, having someone like Mbeumo who works so hard and won't stop running next to you will only help you. I think that probably also helped Norgard second half of last season as well. So he's in the best place to keep growing. And, you know, we've lost players similar to him in the past, like Maz Bistrup when he left to go abroad to Salzburg, and you know we don't want to do that again with another young prospect. So giving him that time in the team, he can grow with us. He's going to be happy at the club, and you know in a year or two he could be our best player potentially. So it's exciting.
I think sort of a lot of credit has to go to Jordan Henderson, and I think it would be remiss for us not to talk about him in a little bit more detail, especially because you completely no the signing, Craig, as soon as he said it was going to happen.
I know, man. I've never like eaten my words, but I've never been like happier to eat my words to like that. I'll say it again. I've said it so many times. I'll say it again. Jordan Henderson, I am sorry I ever doubted you. I am so sorry I ever doubted you.
He has been so good. He's been so good, and like you said, it's helping Mbeumo heaps and bounds. It's helping everyone, and I think his kind of the way he's seamlessly just slotted into that midfield. And he just looks like a floor raiser in a similar way to what Norgard was. So, credit to him, credit to Mbeumo. Midfield looks
in my opinion, he looks like a manager in the making as well. Like when we had Pontus Jansson, they look like managers in the making. And I think that we'll see Jordan Henderson, if he goes down that route, which I hope he does, because he could be a great coach, be great coaches. So fingers crossed he can stick around and stay fit for at least this season, maybe go into next.
Any other players you want to mention? Hickey, I thought was really, really good at left back. We've spoken about how if there was going to be a change, or if we're thinking we were going to see Keith Andrews' kind of favourite lineup, one of them could come at left back in terms of Hickey forcing his way into the team, because obviously he's got two right foot. He's right footed, isn't he? But his left foot is another right foot essentially.
Yeah.
But it's harsh on KLP. But I think Dan, Hickey just kind of showed his quality. He does have a lot of quality on the ball defensively, and it gives us another attacking option in KLP. But it's nice to see him starting Premier League games again.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Carvalho was not in the squad for whatever reason at the weekend, so I think you need Keane Lewis-Potter as an option, an attacking option on the bench. Not that I think he's very good necessarily in that position, but we were low on attacking numbers again on the bench, so I think it's useful to have him there. I think a bit like Yarmo, I think with having Hickey at left back, his ceiling is just higher than Rico Henry's. It's higher than Keane Lewis Potter's. And, the fullback pairing of him and Coyote, again, if you look forward to a few years' time, that could be the best in the league potentially. So I think we do have to look forward and we got to invest in these players of high potential. And, he scored a brilliant goal in the cup and that is the quality he has. And we do not have another fullback. We don't actually have many players with the technical quality of him.
Yeah.
And, if he keeps growing, this was his first Premier League start in about 18 months and you wouldn't be able to tell. So he's only going to get better from that. And I do think going forward, it will be him and Coyote on opposite flanks.
I want to say that he was about 20, 30 days, maybe a month off of 2 years from his last Premier League start. 700 odd days or 700 days it was.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how he looks so comfortable having been out for so long. Obviously, he had the minutes in the cup, but I mean, he pocketed Bryan Mbeumo, and we'll talk about Bryan Mbeumo now. I do want to shout out Kevin Schade, though, because I think whilst he obviously didn't return attacking-wise, I did think he was a constant nuisance. And, we've spoken a lot about Kevin Schade on this podcast, so I don't want to take too much time, but when he plays well, we should mention it. But yeah, Brian's return to the Gtech, Craig, made me sad a little bit. I think Jonathan Birchall might have posted a photo of him kind of walking back to the dressing room, I think maybe at full time, whilst the Brentford players were doing the lap of honour like we normally do. But it just made I don't know why he went to Man United, and I've said it so many times, Craig. I just don't. Why do players still keep going there in their current state? I know the money, and I know there's the draw. I could be the player to turn Man United's fortunes around, but there is no evidence to suggest that any player signing for Man United over the last decade is going to do that or has been able to do that. And it just made me think, like, I don't know. He must have been not looking at the full-time scenes thinking I should have stayed, because I think he should have gone. Like, he's a Champions League level player in his day, and he won player of the month at United, I'm pretty sure, in his first month. But I just think to have that return to Brentford and to kind of get outplayed or played off the park, like a lot of Man United fans are labeling it, and I wouldn't be remiss to say anything different, but it just made me sad, Craig.
Yeah,
that's our boy. It's our boy.
He is, and it's going to be a massively different welcoming when Wissa comes back. I think it's. I think that's inevitable. That's inevitable. He obviously got a really, really big applause when he came to take a corner, like one of the first corners he took, and he was in the corner of the north stand. I was going to say the New Road, the north stand and the west stand. He got a really big applause and then some half-hearted sarcastic boos. And then people on Twitter have just latched onto that. So why are you booing him? Why are you booing him? And it's like, come on, man. Everybody applauded him when he came to the corner. And then there was like that little, he's not our player, so you got to boo him kind of feeling. And it's strange, isn't it? As a Brentford fan, when we do pods and we talk about games afterwards, very, very rarely did we go, God, Bryan Mbeumo did nothing. He did nothing that game. And I was watching it on Saturday, and I was thinking, you could be forgiven for not thinking Bryan Mbeumo wasn't on the pitch at times. He did nothing. We absolutely. I don't actually. Do you know what? I was going to say we nullified him, but I don't think we needed to. And that's what happens when you play him as a 10 or whatever the hell position he was being played. Amorim's setup does not suit having Bryan Mbeumo, Cunha, Fernandes, Šeško. Doesn't suit having all of these players on the pitch when you're just going to play them in the same bloody position anyway. I mean, it benefits us. You know what I mean? It benefits us, but yeah.
Weirdly enough, he could, and this might sound like a fucking crazy idea, but weirdly enough, he could just play Bryan on the right, Cunha on the left, and Šeško through the middle and playing a 4-3-3.
Who'd have thought it? But, I know. It was painful seeing him, and I'm pretty sure I sent a photo of him in our chat just at kickoff saying pain. But there was people saying, he looked like he was close to bursting into tears at the end of the game. And it was like, I think that he'll go and cry on his bed of money when he gets home. He'll be all right.
Dan, it kind of ties into what my last question is in the running order. And obviously, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I do think we played really well on Saturday. But were United just that shit? Can we read into the results?
They were worse than I thought. They definitely were worse than I thought. Like I said, I think at times this season they have looked better. And at times they have dominated games more. I remember when they played Burnley, although they won that very late on, they should have been out of sight by that stage. And, on paper, you look at Cunha, Wolves' best player last season. We know what Bryan Mbeumo can do. Fernandes is the one player who has kind of performed for them over the years, despite their bad form. Sesko, for the amount of money he came from, and obviously he scored quite a few goals in Germany, on paper, they look like they should really be a threat going forwards. And I still think Bryan was probably one of their better players, despite not, despite not doing a great deal. He was one of the causes for their goal when he put pressure on Kelleher. Obviously, he won the penalty. Some will say that he should take penalties perhaps for them from now on, because Fernandes has missed a couple in the league now. So, yes, they weren't very good. And I think a lot of teams can say that after playing Man United in the last year and a bit now. And if you look at Amorim's record, it is down there with some of the worst Premier League managers. They are, out of the 17 teams that have been in the Premier League this year and last year, I think they're near enough bottom or second bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a big sample size now. So I think we do have to look at it with that in mind. I do think City will be a very different game next week, although they do have weaknesses as well, and weaknesses that we could exploit the way we play. But yes, I do think we will have to be a bit more cautious next week, because I don't think that, I think they'll be a lot better than Manchester United. And you would still have thought Man United will improve at some point, but probably not under Amorim. But surely they will get better at some point.
You give me a nice segue into some City chat, because it is a difficult one to kind of look at. I think a lot of people would say, despite having been so good against United in a 4, with the quality that City have, we should go to a back 5. There was even some comments on our last pod to say that people didn't understand the enthusiasm for a back 5, but I think a lot of people would have said the opposite against United. Obviously, it's worked out well to go to a 4. Craig, all of this to say, how the hell should we set up against City?
What a great question. In my, you know what? Last week we were so adamant that a 5 shouldn't be played against Fulham, then a 5 could be played against United because of their way they want to play. And then we go to a 4, and it's so successful. And then you're like, do you go back to a 5 for City? If I'm Keith Andrews, I probably feel like I can't get this decision right. He's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with this, because as football fans, he is a young manager. His tenure is young still. No matter what he does, we as football fans, when we come on next week's pod, will say he got that decision wrong. If we lose the game, we'll come on here and we'll say he should have gone to a back 5, or he should have stayed with the back 4. But that's the unfortunate life of a young manager as well. So I feel sorry for him in that way of looking at it. But in my way of looking at it, stay with the back 4. Don't change the team now. That was so successful that against United. Don't change it. We saw the successes of it against Chelsea. I understand, and we catch them on the counter. But I would rather us have a closer, more compact back 4 of Kyoto, Sepp, Collins, and Hickey, because I think Hickey should start again, compared to a wide here, there, and everywhere back 3 of Pinnock, Collins, and Sepp. Because I'm looking at the Fulham game and I'm thinking, we gave Fulham so much time and so much space with 5. By the end of the game, like 7 defensive players on the pitch, and we still gave them so much time. And Manchester City will exploit that so much more than what Fulham did, and Fulham can. And if we are going to go to a back 3 and we're going to let our fullbacks push really high, which means the back 3 are then stretched across, There's more space. There's more areas to attack. There's more areas to exploit. I would rather go for a compact back four than a here, there, and everywhere botch job back three of Pinnock, Sepp, and Collins. I would say. I know that's like kind of countered what we've been saying this whole time, but that's what I would do.
Dan, you're smiling, and I can't tell if what were you thinking?
I would probably still go back five, if I'm honest. I think, like as Craig said, last week we were saying that these two games are about 5 games. And I think where we got it wrong is that we thought Man United would be better than they are. I still think against a certain level of team, a back five is more effective. And I think City are much more likely to come and be that level of team than Manchester United. And, even historically, looking back over the years in the Premier League, we have got more results against the better teams playing a back five than a back four. So I do think I would sway towards the back fives. I'd keep Hickey in as a left wing back. I'd consider Christopher Ajer instead of Ethan Pinnock. There are obviously 2 selection issues that Keith Andrews will have to come face to face with. But I think this game will involve a lot more soaking up pressure, a lot more City possession. If we have that front two of Schade and Thiago, obviously we can still go direct, we can still go longer and try and get them in on the counter, similar to the Chelsea game. But, I fully expect City to really dominate possession no matter what formation we play here.
Hear me out. What about we go to a back five, but Hickey is the left-sided centre-back, and then you bring KLP in? So you'd have a back five of Coyote on the right wing back, KLP as left wing back, and then the 3 in the middle would be Sepp, Collins, and Aaron Hickey instead of Ethan Pinnock or instead of Christopher Ajer.
He's definitely got more quality on the ball than Ethan Pinnock if you stick him there. So when we do win the possession back, maybe he can find Schade, maybe he can find Thiago a bit more easily.
It's also his second game in the Premier League for almost 2 years, so I'd probably want him to play in his most comfortable position at this stage. I think whilst he's still getting that rhythm back, I would be a bit nervous to put him back.
It'd be fine. Left-sided defender, he'd be fine. He'd be fine.
What I will say is, if it's a 5, and we're chasing the game, we need to see it change.
And then you'd have Dango on the bench, whereas obviously the bench, if I don't know what's happened with Carvalho and whether we're back this weekend, I don't know whether Nelson will be back this weekend, but if they're not, you don't have those attacking options. Whereas if it is a back five and then Dango is on the bench, then he is someone who can come on as the best option to try and change the game.
Yeah, and I think if Carvalho and Nelson and Dango are all options off the bench, then I think it would be, I don't know. Let us know in the comments. I think it would be sensible to go to a back five, but if we have the options on the bench to change it, then we should and we can. So yeah, I think that would be a good point to wrap things up. Let us know what you think about the kind of approach going into the City game, because it will be massively different to the United game. We'll be back after the City game with a full-time show. Like I said, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts around the game. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Dan, Craig, it's been a pleasure, and I'll chat to you next week.
Up the bees.
Up the bees.